This story is titled, My Mom Spent $17,000 of My Money on a Secret Trip, but I froze the account and ruined their vacation. Hey everyone, I don't usually post stuff like this, but I need to see some perspectives. Let me start from the beginning to give you all the context. Growing up, my family wasn't what you'd call picture perfect. My parents split when I was 8, and from there, my life kind of split too. I stayed with my mom most of the time, while my dad moved out and became the weekend parent. Now let me tell you about my dad. He's the kind of guy you read about in those motivational parenting posts. Solid, dependable, and always putting me first. Even after the divorce, he made sure I never felt like I was missing out. He'd take me to the park, help me with school projects, and never missed a single birthday. My mom, on the other hand, was, well, let's just say she had a different approach to parenting. Not long after the divorce, my mom met Carl. He was this flashy guy who worked in sales and seemed to have his life together, or so I thought. He played the part of the cool stepdad. He'd bring me candy, crack jokes, and act like he genuinely cared. But everything changed when my half-sister Tina was born. Suddenly, I wasn't just the kid from mom's first marriage, I was an outsider. It didn't happen overnight, but little things started piling up. Carl would make comments like, "Don't you want to spend more time with your dad?" Or, "It must be tough not having your real family around." It wasn't just the comments, it was the way Carl acted, like I was some stray dog who wandered in uninvited. He'd rearrange the living room and make my things disappear, saying stuff like, "This house isn't a storage unit for your dad's leftovers." Mom, who used to back me up, just laughed it off. And then there was Tina. As soon as she could babble, Carl treated her like she was made of gold. I went from being mom's kid to feeling like a guest in her life. At first, I brushed it off, but then mom started acting differently too. She was less interested in what I was doing at school, stopped asking how my weekends with dad went, and seemed completely absorbed in her new little family. When I was 13, I overheard a conversation that flipped my world upside down. I was getting a glass of water late at night when I heard Carl talking to mom in the kitchen. "We don't need Sophia's child support anymore," Carl said, his voice low but firm. "My promotion covers everything. She'd be better off with Mark anyway." Mark, by the way, is my dad. Mom didn't even argue. She just said, "You're right. I'll talk to him tomorrow." I stood there, frozen. It wasn't like I was some burden who needed to be shipped off, but that's exactly how they made me feel. The next day, mom sat me down with this fake sympathetic smile and said, "Sweetie, we've been thinking, and we believe you'd have more opportunities living with your dad full-time. It's what's best for you." Translation: we don't need you anymore. So, I packed my things and moved in with dad. And you know what? It turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. My dad didn't just take me in. He made me feel like I belonged. He gave me the bigger bedroom in his apartment, painted it my favorite color, and even let me pick out new furniture. He didn't pry into why I was moving in, or make me feel awkward about it. He just said, "This is your home now." From that point on, it was me and dad against the world. When college applications rolled around, he was right there with me, helping me write essays and figure out finances. He paid for everything, even when I tried to tell him I could take out loans. "Your education is my responsibility," he'd say, brushing off any argument. I ended up getting into a great school and graduated with a solid job lined up. Dad was so proud, and honestly, I wouldn't have been able to do any of it without him. Fast forward a few years, and life was good. I had my own place, a great job, and still saw Dad every Sunday for dinner. But then, last year, everything changed. Dad got diagnosed with late-stage cancer. It was like the ground disappeared beneath me. One day he was fine, and the next, he was in the hospital talking about treatment plans and percentages I didn't want to hear. He fought hard, but it wasn't enough. Within 4 months, he was gone. Losing Dad was the hardest thing I've ever been through. He was my rock, my constant, the one person who never let me down. After the funeral, I felt completely adrift. Sure, I had friends and a good job, but nothing filled the void he left behind. When I went through his will, I discovered he'd left me everything: his apartment, his savings, and a small stock portfolio. It added up to about $300,000. I couldn't even think about the money at first. It felt like blood money, a constant reminder of what I'd lost. For months, I just went through the motions: work, home, repeat. Then, one random day, my phone rang. My mom called me from an odd number. I hadn't heard from my mom in years, like not even a text. Then suddenly, there she was, calling me out of nowhere. I almost didn't pick up, figured it was probably a scam call, but something in me hesitated. "Sophia, it's your mom." I froze. She wasn't sure if I'd listen. I wanted to say I'm so sorry about your dad. I only just heard. How are you holding up?" "Holding up?" I wanted to laugh. My dad had been gone for months. Where was she when I was drowning in funeral arrangements and figuring out how to live without the only parent who ever gave a damn about me. But instead of saying any of that, I just mumbled, "I'm okay, I guess." She kept talking, saying things like, "I've been thinking about you so much," and "I know I wasn't there for you like I should have been." But she caught me off guard saying, "I'd really like to see you again. Maybe we can have coffee or something?" At first, I wanted to say no. What did she expect? That she could just waltz back into my life after years of radio silence? But here's the thing. Losing Dad left this massive hole in my life. For the first time ever, I felt completely alone. No siblings to call, no family to lean on, just me in an empty apartment that still smelled like the lasagna leftovers Dad used to bring over every Sunday. So, yeah, I said yes. Not because I trusted her or even really wanted to see her, but because I couldn't shake the idea that maybe she'd changed. Grief does weird things to people, right? Maybe losing her husband had made her realize what's actually important. We met up at this little coffee shop downtown. I showed up 10 minutes late on purpose, half hoping she'd bail before I got there. But nope, there she was, sitting at a corner table, nursing a latte. "Sophia," she said, standing up and pulling me into this awkward hug before I could dodge her. "It's so good to see you." I sat down, feeling stiff and out of place. "Yeah, you too." Total lie, but whatever. She dove straight into the small talk, asking about my job, my apartment, my travels. It was all surface-level stuff, like she was trying to feel me out. I kept my answers short, giving her just enough to keep the conversation from dying. Eventually, she got to the point. "I've been thinking about everything that happened when you were younger," she said, staring into her coffee cup, like it held the answers to life's big question. "I know I wasn't the best mom to you. I made a lot of mistakes. No kidding. I really want to make things right," she continued. "I know it's a lot to ask, but I'd like us to start over. Build a real relationship." Part of me wanted to laugh in her face. Build a relationship? Now? After years of making me feel like an afterthought? But another part of me, the part that missed having family, wanted to believe her. "Why now?" I asked, folding my arms. "Why not? I don't know. 5 years ago? 10 years ago?" She sighed, looking down at her coffee. "Because I was selfish, Sophia. I was wrapped up in my own life and didn't realize how much I was missing. Losing Carl made me see things differently." I blinked. "What do you mean, losing Carl?" She looked up at me, her expression a mix of sadness and hesitation. "He passed away a few months ago. Heart attack." I stared at her, completely blindsided. Carl, the man who'd made me feel like I didn't belong in my own home, the one who'd convinced her to send me to live with Dad, was dead? And this was the first I was hearing of it? Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. "I didn't think you'd care," she said quietly, like that was supposed to make it better. But after he was gone, it made me realize how much time I've wasted, how much I've lost. I sat there, trying to process. It wasn't like I'd ever liked Carl, but hearing that he was gone hit me in a weird way. I wanted to feel bad for her, but another part of me, the part that remembered how easily she'd cast me aside for his sake, couldn't muster much sympathy. "I know I can't make up for the past," she continued, her voice cracking just slightly, "but I want to try, if you'll let me." I didn't trust her. Not entirely. But there was this tiny voice in the back of my head saying, what if she means it? What if this is my one chance to have some kind of relationship with my mom? So I gave her the benefit of the doubt. We started meeting up more regularly after that. Coffee here, lunch there. At first, it was weird. I wasn't used to her asking about my life or acting like she actually cared, but over time, I started to let my guard down. She even brought Tina into the mix. My half-sister, the golden child, was now 22 and still living at home. She was in this weird limbo where she was between jobs, but not really trying to find one. Mom introduced us like we were strangers, which, to be fair, we basically were. Tina acted all casual, like we hadn't spent most of our childhood ignoring each other. "Mom's been talking about you nonstop. It's kind of annoying." I laughed, mostly out of awkwardness, and said something like, "Yeah, well, she's got a lot to catch up on." Despite everything, I actually started to like Tina. She was funny in that sarcastic, self-deprecating way, and we bonded over how ridiculous Mom could be sometimes. Before I knew it, I was visiting their place every couple of weeks. It wasn't anything fancy, just a small house on the outskirts of town, but it felt weirdly familiar. Mom would cook dinner, Tina would tell some over-the-top story about a failed job interview, and for a second, it almost felt like I had a family again. Almost. Because no matter how nice things seemed on the surface, there was always this nagging feeling in the back of my mind, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Then came the moment that changed everything. My mom sat me down after one of our family dinners. if you can even call it that, and dropped this whole story about needing back surgery. Apparently, it was serious, like life or death levels of serious. The doctor says if I don't get it soon, I might not be able to walk properly again, she said, clutching her back. The problem is, the surgery's expensive, and my insurance won't cover it. I leaned back in my chair, trying to process. How much? $20,000 up front, she said, like it was no big deal. 20 grand? Who just casually asks for that kind of money? I mean, sure, I was doing well, but I wasn't exactly Jeff Bezos. I wouldn't ask, but I don't know what else to do, she added, her voice cracking for dramatic effect. I hate being in this position, Sophia. I should have been suspicious right then and there. I mean, this was a woman who'd ghosted me for years, only to resurface after Dad died. But grief does weird things to you. Losing Dad had left me raw, and the thought of Mom going through something serious, even after everything, made me feel sick. Fine, I said finally. I'll help. But only half now. I want to see the hospital bill before I pay the rest. Her eyes lit up like she'd just won the lottery. Thank you, Sophia. You don't know what this means to me. I transferred $17,000 to her account that night. A week later, she and Tina packed their bags and left for the surgery. They were supposedly flying to a specialist hospital out of state. Something about it being the best place for this kind of procedure. I didn't question it much because, honestly, I didn't want to think about it too hard. Part of me wanted to trust her, to believe that this time she was being honest, even though a little voice in my head kept whispering, something doesn't feel right. For the first couple of days, I checked in. How's it going? I texted. Mom replied with the usual, it's a process. Lots of tests first. The surgery is tomorrow. I'll keep you updated. Fair enough. I wasn't expecting hourly updates or anything, so I let it slide. I told myself to stop overthinking it. She was my mom, after all. And this was serious, but that nagging feeling in the back of my mind didn't go away. And then Christmas rolled around, and things started to feel off. I was scrolling through Instagram, half watching a cheesy holiday movie, when I got a DM from my friend Rachel. She's the type of a friend who got all the news. So when I saw her name on the screen, I knew she's up to something. Hey, I thought your mom was having surgery. Check this out. Attached was a screenshot of Tina's latest Instagram story. And let me tell you, it wasn't exactly what I was expecting. Instead of a hospital room or a recovery selfie, it was a picture of Tina posing in front of the Eiffel Tower. I stared at my phone, thinking maybe it was some kind of glitch, or an old photo she'd reposted. But nope, the timestamp was clear. Posted 10 minutes ago. What the hell? I clicked through her stories, my stomach tightening with every swipe. There was Tina shopping at a designer boutique, posing with Mom in front of some Christmas market in Paris. Paris. Not exactly known for its groundbreaking back surgery. At first, I didn't want to believe it. Maybe there was some explanation. Maybe they had a layover in Paris and decided to stretch their legs? Yeah, I know. It sounds stupid now, but I was grasping at straws. But as the hours went on, more stories popped up. There was Tina flaunting a Louis Vuitton shopping bag. Mom smiling in front of a 5-star hotel. Even a group photo with my Aunt Karen and cousin Emma, who I didn't even know were involved in this whole thing. By Christmas morning, the denial was gone. This wasn't a layover. This was a full-blown vacation, and I'd just financed it. I called Mom that morning, trying to keep my voice steady. Hey, just checking in. How's recovery going? Oh, sweetie, she said, her tone all syrupy. It's going great. The doctor said the surgery was a success. I'm starting physical therapy tomorrow. Physical therapy? Tomorrow? Was she planning to do squats in front of the Louvre? That's good to hear, I said, gritting my teeth. Where are you staying? The hospital or a hotel? Oh, the hospital has this partnership with a recovery center, she said quickly. It's very comfortable. Comfortable? Yeah, I bet. Probably has a minibar and room service too. I wanted to blow up right then and there, but something stopped me. Maybe it was shock, or maybe I just needed to hear her lie one more time to really let it sink in. Over the next few days, I played along. I kept texting her, asking for updates, and she kept feeding me the same garbage. The therapist says I'm progressing faster than expected. They're so impressed with my recovery. Meanwhile, Tina was still posting nonstop. By now, she'd moved on to flexing their meals, plates of food that looked more expensive than my monthly rent. At one point, Rachel texted me again. Did you see this? It was a photo of Mom and Tina lounging by a pool at what looked like a private villa. The caption? Living our best lives. Blessed. Yeah, blessed. Courtesy of my $17,000. At that point, I knew I couldn't let it slide. I started digging. So I called the hospital Mom had supposedly gone to. After being transferred 3 times, I finally got someone on the phone who confirmed what I already knew. No record of her. Then I checked the flight details she'd sent me. Sure enough, they matched a trip to Paris, not to some specialist hospital out of state. The final nail in the coffin was a message from my cousin Emma. "Thanks for covering the villa," she wrote. "This place is amazing." I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. Villa? Since when was I covering a villa? That night, I made my decision. I froze the account I had set up for the second payment. Then, I sent Mom one last text. "I know you're not at a hospital. Don't contact me again." Her response came within minutes. "Sophia, it's not what you think. Please let me explain." But I wasn't interested in explanation. However, my mom and Tina aren't the type to let things slide. Not when there's more chaos to stir up. A few days after New Year's, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Sophia, it's your mother. Please, we need to talk. It's urgent." Classic. Even when blocked, she found a way to weasel through. Urgent? Sure. Because everything with her is a crisis when it doesn't go her way. I stared at the message for a second before tossing my phone on the couch. Yeah, not happening. Over the next week, I got calls from random numbers, emails from throwaway accounts, even a couple of Facebook messages from Tina. They all had the same vibe. "We need to clear the air. You don't understand the whole story. Please unblock us." What was there to clear up? I'd caught them red-handed, sipping espresso in Paris with my money. There wasn't exactly a lot of gray area here. But then, things got weirder. One day, while I was at work, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email, and the subject line read, "Urgent, hospital bill attached." I opened it, and sure enough, there was an attachment labeled invoice.pdf. When I opened it, I had to fight the urge to roll my eyes into the next dimension. It was the most obvious forgery I'd ever seen. The hospital logo was blurry and stretched, like they'd copied it off a Google image search. The address wasn't even for a hospital. It was for some random medical supply store in California. Oh, and let's not forget the pièce de résistance. The payment details section listed my mom's personal bank account. Seriously? This was their big play? A fake invoice that looked like it had been thrown together in Microsoft Paint? I decided to call them out, but not directly. Instead, I replied to the email with a single sentence. "Please have the hospital contact me directly for payment verification." Less than an hour later, I got a frantic response. No, that won't be necessary. The hospital only accepts payment through my account because of their unique billing system." Unique billing system? Yeah, and I'm the Queen of England. I didn't reply. That weekend, I got another surprise. This time from my cousin Emma. She called me out of nowhere, which was weird because we'd barely spoken in years. "Hey, Sophia," she said, her tone a little too casual. "I just wanted to check in. How are you doing?" I knew right away she wasn't calling just to catch up. "What's up, Emma?" "Well, I was just wondering if you've talked to Aunt Linda recently," she said, referring to my mom. I sighed. "Nope, and I'm not planning to." There was a long pause. "She mentioned something about being in a tough spot," Emma said carefully. "She didn't go into details, but it sounded serious." "Serious, huh? Like not being able to pay for her villa rental? Or maybe struggling to cover her Louis Vuitton addiction?" I didn't say any of that, though. I just told Emma, she made her choices. It's not my problem anymore. The next week, the desperation hit a new level. Tina kept posting on social media about how their wealthy relative had abandoned them in a foreign country after promising to help. She didn't name me outright, but it was obvious who she was talking about. One post had a picture of her and my mom sitting on their luggage at an airport, looking all sad and defeated. The caption read, "We trusted someone, and they left us stranded. Never again." I wanted to reply so badly. I wanted to post the receipts, the fake hospital bill, the Paris vacation photos, everything. But I knew it wasn't worth it. Engaging with their pity party would only make me look bad. Instead, I just screenshot everything and saved it for later. A few days after that, Rachel called me with another update. "You're not gonna believe this," she said, barely able to contain her laughter. "What now?" I asked, bracing myself. "Tina started a GoFundMe," Rachel said. "She's trying to raise $20,000 to recover from being stranded abroad." I burst out laughing. "Oh, come on! Who's falling for that?" Apparently not many people. Rachel sent me the link, and the fundraiser had only raised about $150, mostly from distant relatives who probably didn't know the full story. I'll admit, I was tempted to donate $1 just to leave a comment like, "Should have budgeted better," but I resisted. Eventually, reality started to catch up with them. The villa they'd rented in Paris? Turns out they hadn't paid the full balance, and the owner was threatening to call the police. They ended up selling off most of the designer stuff they'd bought to cover the costs. When they finally made it back home, things started falling apart fast. Tina had lost her part-time job because she'd stayed away for too long. And apparently, they hadn't paid the rent on time while they were off living their best lives in Paris. Of course, Mom's go-to solution was to guilt trip the rest of the family. She started calling anyone who would pick up, playing the victim, and trying to squeeze out some sympathy. And maybe a little cash. Grandma was the first to fill me in during one of our usual calls. "Your mother called me this morning," she said. She was sobbing, going on about how unfair everything is and how nobody's helping her. "Unfair?" I said. "That's bold for someone who scammed me out of 10 grand to fund a vacation." "She's got some nerve," Grandma replied. "But don't worry, I didn't give her anything. I told her she made this mess and needs to clean it up herself." I sighed. "I'm sorry she's dragging you into this. You shouldn't have to deal with her nonsense." "Don't apologize," Grandma said. "You've done more than enough for her. If anything, I should have warned you. Your mother's always been like this, thinking tears will fix everything. I've had years of practice dealing with her, so don't let it weigh on you." Even though she brushed it off, I couldn't help feeling bad. "Still, it's not fair you had to deal with her calls. She's my problem, not yours. She's been pulling this kind of thing since before you were born. I'm used to it. What matters is you've stood your ground. You've done the right thing, and don't let her make you think otherwise." "Thanks," I said. "I just hate that it's come to this. I wish things could be different." "So do I," Grandma said. "But some people don't change, no matter how much you want them to. You're doing what's best for you, and that's what counts." By the time we hung up, I felt a bit better. Mom might have been stirring up trouble, but at least I had someone who understood and had my back. That was enough to keep me steady. But things didn't stop there. A couple of days later, my cousin Emma reached out to me. "Hey, Sophia, do you know what your mom and Tina have been saying about you?" I sighed. "Let me guess. It's somehow all my fault they're broke?" "Basically," Emma said. "But that's not even the worst part. Remember how they convinced me to chip in for emergencies during their trip? Turns out their emergency was a designer bag Tina just had to have. When I asked for the money back, your mom acted like I was being unreasonable and said I should have known it wasn't a loan. I felt my stomach drop. "You're kidding me." "Nope. And when I pushed, Tina called me greedy and said I wasn't supportive of family." I groaned. "Unreal. Did you tell them off?" "Oh, I did," Emma said. "It got ugly. I told them they're the ones who don't care about family, and I'm done bailing them out. Your mom started screaming about how nobody understands what she's been through, and Tina just rolled her eyes like it's all a big joke. I walked out and told them they're on their own." "Good for you," I said. But inside, I was fuming. They had no shame. None at all. I knew the rest of the story indirectly. I got a voicemail from my mom's landlord, which was already weird because I'd never met the guy in my life. "Hi, this is Mr. Randall, your mother's landlord. She mentioned you might be able to clarify some things regarding her rent situation. Can you please give me a call back?" "What?" I called him back, and what he told me had me absolutely floored. Apparently, my mom had spun this whole story about how I'd promised to pay her rent while she was away for medical reasons, and then backed out, leaving her in a financial hole. "She made it sound like you were supposed to be supporting her financially," the landlord said, sounding skeptical. "But honestly, it didn't add up, so I wanted to check with you directly." I was livid. "No, that's not true at all," I said. "She lied to me about needing surgery to get money for a trip to Paris. I had no idea she was even behind on rent until now." The landlord sighed. "That's what I figured." "Well, thanks for clearing it up. I'll handle it from here." "Handle it?" I wasn't done. I called my mom immediately, and for once, she actually answered. "Why is your landlord calling me about your rent?" I demanded, before she could even say a word. There was a pause, and then she went full innocent act. "Oh, I just mentioned you because I thought maybe you could help explain my situation." "Explain your situation? You mean lie for you?" My voice was shaking at this point. "You told him I promised to pay your rent. What is wrong with you?" "Calm down, Sophia," she said, like I was the one being unreasonable. "I only said that because I didn't know what else to do. He's threatening to evict me." "Well, maybe you should have thought about that before you spent all your money shopping in Paris," I snapped. Her tone shifted immediately. "I can't believe you're being so selfish," she hissed. "After everything I've been through, you can't even help me out a little." I laughed, but it wasn't the funny kind. "You've got to be kidding me. You lied to me, stole from me, and now you're dragging my name through the mud to cover your tracks. You're unbelievable." "That's rich coming from you," she shot back. "You've had everything handed to you, and now you're acting like you're better than us." At that point, I hung up. I was done arguing with her, but I wasn't done entirely. The next day, I called a lawyer. I explained everything, the fake surgery, the stolen money, the defamation, and asked what my options were. You have a strong case for a defamation claim, the lawyer said. We can also pursue legal action for fraud if you want to go that route. Fraud? That word hit me like a ton of bricks. It sounded so serious, but when I thought about it, that's exactly what it was. Mom had conned me out of 10 grand and then tried to ruin my reputation when it backfired. I didn't hesitate. Let's do it, I said. Filing the lawsuit was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the most liberating. Mom and Tina tried to talk me out of it, of course. Tina sent me a long, rambling message about how I was tearing the family apart and how money isn't everything. Funny, because when it was my money, apparently, it meant a whole lot to them. Mom even tried to play the victim, saying I was destroying her life. The audacity was unreal. I mean, who exactly had been destroying whose life here? But I didn't back down. For once, I put myself first. It felt strange at first, like I was betraying some unspoken rule that I had to keep sacrificing for their benefit. But I stuck to my guns. It wasn't just about the money. It was about principle. It was about finally standing up and saying, enough. The case dragged on for months. I won't lie. There were moments I doubted myself. The legal fees piled up. The constant back and forth with my lawyer was draining. And every time I heard from Mom or Tina, I felt nauseous. But I reminded myself why I was doing this. To set things straight, to hold them accountable, and to prove, to them and to myself, that I wasn't going to let them take advantage of me ever again. In the end, the court sided with me. Mom and Tina had to pay back the $17,000, and the defamation claim ensured they couldn't pull the same stunt again. I can't even describe the feeling of walking out of that courtroom knowing I'd won, not just the case, but my freedom from their BS. After the case was over, I cut ties with them completely. No more calls, no more texts, no more second chances. They'd crossed every line, and I wasn't about to let them back into my life. It wasn't an easy decision. I mean, cutting off family is never simple, but it was necessary. Sometimes you've got to protect your own peace, even if it means walking away from the people who are supposed to be closest to you. The funny thing is, once the dust settled, I didn't feel angry anymore. It wasn't about holding a grudge or plotting revenge. It was just indifference. Like they were strangers I used to know. They made their choices, and I made mine. And honestly, I'm better off without them. These days, I focus on myself. I've reconnected with old friends, started traveling again, and even got a promotion at work. Life feels lighter without their chaos hanging over me, and I'm finally starting to feel like myself again. And yeah, I've learned a lot through this whole mess. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone dealing with toxic family members, it's this. You're not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep them warm. If they're not willing to respect you, you're not obligated to stick around. You owe it to yourself to walk away, even if it feels like the hardest thing in the world. So yeah, that's the story. It's messy, it's ridiculous, but it's mine. If you've ever dealt with entitled family members, you get it. Sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away and let them deal with the fallout on their own. Life's too short to keep waiting for people to change when you already know they won't. Anyway, thanks for reading if you made it this far. Hope this gives someone out there the courage to put themselves first for once. Trust me, it's worth it.